Welcome to the 100 Master Coaches series featuring master coaches from around the world. Let's journey together on this 100 Master Coaches series, with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Leda Turai is a master certified coach, with more than 20 years of international work experience in profit, non-profit organizations, and academic settings. She's an enabler, a supporter, and also a challenger. Her coaching is a thought-provoking and co-creative process, helping her clients access deeper ways of thinking and sustainable business results. Now on to the show.
Hello, and welcome to the 100 Master Coaches show. This is Coach Mal, and today my special guest is from Lithuania. Her name is Leda Turai. So please give her a warm welcome. Welcome to the show, Leda.
Thank you very much. And the abbreviation of Lithuania is L and T, like my name and my surname.
That is special, indeed. It's so easy to remember. So we're going to jump in right now. Tell us, Leda, how did your coaching journey begin?
Yeah, I don't find that an easy question, because I think what makes me think about is, what do we call the beginning? Is it, when someone decides that I'm going to study coaching and become a coach, or does it start earlier? So if I look back, I often share with people that when I was a kid, I had this strange idea that if I could become a little bug and enter people's heads to understand, how they think, how they create their realities. And I was very small when I had actually that idea. So I think if I look back, I was quite curious. Of course, then they taught me not to be curious anymore. So I have to relearn it at some point. But I think there are a couple of things also in my childhood which really helps me to even believe more in coaching. And one is that I didn't have a particularly easy childhood. And I think, I don't know how, but actually at some point I got that idea that I just can't create a parallel world for myself and create dreams where I can be whoever I want, I can behave the way I want, I can be surrounded by people I want to be surrounded. And funnily, I created that dream for probably like 6-7 years. So that was my holiday often. I was kind of during the evening when I stopped my reality and I went to bed, I started to create those ideas and those stories until I fell asleep. So that was one thing which was interesting. And funnily enough, many things came true, maybe not exactly that way, but even I created my husband for myself, and I created that I would be living in somewhere in the Nordic countries, though I didn't know much about them at that time. So that was one. Then I also recall, I just remembered it this morning, that when I was 16, I didn't have a good relationship with my mom. And one day I said, Mom, we have to sit down and we have to discuss what's the relationship we want to have, because it's not working for us.
Wow.
And I think that's what I really believe coaching is about, is how do we create those working relationships. So this is the non-official part. And the official part started probably in 2007 when I was studying psychology, and I wanted to pick up a topic to write my thesis about, which was comparing different things, but I couldn't really find books about them. I only found one surname on the internet, and I got in touch with her, and she said, "Oh, I don't know any books, but please come to Ireland. We are going to have a summer school on psychology." And I said, "Yes, I'm coming." So that's when it started. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know where I'm going. The day before my trip, I understood that it's not just a flight to Dublin, but I will still have to travel about 300 miles to that place. But that was the week when I got in touch with coaching. And after that week, I said, I don't care what does it take, but I do want to study it.
Wow. You tell the story so beautifully, it's the stories and the things that we create. Firstly, perhaps in our minds, and then bringing that forward to life as we connect with the reality. And it just sounded like that. It was just coming out as though it was supposed to happen when it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, and we do create our reality. I do think that we all have our subjective realities, and partly the whole purpose of life is to understand more about the objective reality which surrounds us, and which is probably quite beautiful.
So when you came about to find out this is it, how was that initial years of that journey for you?
I commuted to Ireland. That's where I studied it.
Yeah.
And I was
right.
flying there every month for a week. And then when I got my certificate, I learned that there are only, probably, I think at that time we were like 4 or 5 certified, not credentialed, certified coaches in Lithuania. And we gathered together. I knew a couple of those people, so I got to know the rest of them.
Yeah.
And we didn't know much about this world of coaching. We somehow figured out that there is an ICF. I think we even didn't understand in the beginning how to create a coaching association, because we created 2. And we thought that if you need to create a local organization, then you become an ICF organization. But then we figured out that this is not the way. So finally, so it was really learning, not just about coaching, but learning also about the world of ICF. And we did create an ICF, and we had founders who were actually at the beginning even not, ICF members or coaches, but just very, very fond about coaching. So that was one part of it, because it was a kind of a romantic atmosphere, that we were some enthusiasts who really believed in coaching, and we practiced together, and we had really big dreams. On the other hand, we had the reality where some people didn't know at all anything about coaching. This was in 2007 or 8.
Yeah.
And some people were already very confused and frustrated, because some consultants, having read a couple of books about coaching, they taught what coaching is. So they taught the GROW model, which was mind-blowing in the beginning, and the managers went back to their workplace, and instead of telling, they asked questions. But they learned that it's not working so well. It works in the beginning because it's different.
Yeah.
But without listening, without really understanding how people function, without knowing that that's also a relationship and the mindset, they just said that this is not working. So they got very frustrated. And our job was to somehow, create that good understanding about what coaching is. Organize conferences, had lots of meetings. I think we attracted quite a lot of people in the beginning. And so it's really nice to look back. It was always a small chapter. Now, 2 years ago, it started to grow even more. So that also says something, that we went through quite a long journey. But I do look back with, I think, with some nostalgia, and also with gratitude for those people with whom we started and who are still part of ICF. Some of these people went away. They are not coaches anymore. They don't do that, but we still keep in touch.
Yeah.
And I think today coaching in Lithuania has quite a good reputation.
It's as though like that idea of yours when you were a child to get into the brain and understand the different people has actually impacted people in Lithuania as well in the same way. And that has grown and continued to this day. You must be really proud of that.
Yeah, I think, I think I'm very grateful for having had the chance to be a pioneer, because it's always important to go through that journey. I think there are some privileges because you understand, the roots. And I think you ask very different questions when you get into a place which is not yet fully explored, or it's not yet mature enough. And having gone through that journey, I think I have learned also so much about ICF Global, and I had the chance to meet a lot of people and consult with them. Sometimes, we talked about geography at the beginning, and sometimes I think that probably there are not so many countries in the world where I wouldn't have at least a coach whom I know. Maybe not an MCC coach, because we also talk that there are probably not so many MCC coaches, but there are people. And I have actually, I remember the story. It was a couple of years ago, just before COVID. I was in a meeting. I worked with a bank, and we had a kind of a meeting. We talked about how our project is going, and we didn't finish on time. So the HR person said that, would you mind if I just invited my friend from abroad to come in, because she's not Lithuanian. We agreed that she comes here to meet me. And we said, yeah, of course. And she came in, we said hello to her. She said hello to us. And then she looked at me and she said, Leda, is this you?
Oh.
And I was looking at her and I said, where do I know you from? And she said, we met in Brazil at an ICF meeting.
Wow.
A couple of years before. So
small world.
Just fascinating how, you can meet people in unexpected places.
And if I were to get into that memory bank and ask you if there was a brave moment in that journey, which of that memory would come out?
Sometimes I ask my husband, how he sees me. And because I think, sometimes we are just in the situation and we don't really consider, is this brave or not brave? It's probably, even if you have fears, it's probably just the natural next step to do it, or just a choice, an option. But I asked also him, does he see something as if I'm being brave or not? And from his perspective, he thinks that what's brave in me, and probably this is not brave for everyone, but brave for me, that I do my own thinking. So I probably challenge conventional things, probably in a very respectful way. I'm not rebel in that sense that I go against things, but I do have the tendency to challenge rules, challenge traditions, challenge something which we are not anymore questioning. And then I do my own thinking and go that way, even if that's difficult. Again, a couple of stories here, and they might sound just like very simple, but what's coming to my mind. So there was one story, which was again at the beginning of my coaching career, when we didn't have so many coaches. I got a project, and it was with a bank, and I had like 123 clients, all the managers from all levels. And that was also interesting, and at some point also probably brave to go into that and be part of that the entanglement and stay professional and objective. When they were just sharing with me, you know, person A was talking about how he got in conflict with person B, and then person B was telling how was in conflict with person A. So it was a very interesting project full of very different learnings. But I think there was at some point, because we were with some colleagues, we were not experienced as entrepreneurs, and I wasn't experienced as an entrepreneur at that time. So we got really good money for that project, but my colleagues spent that money very early, and I still had scheduled sessions for 1.5 years, but there was no money anymore to get paid. And I just decided to go on with it, you know, and for 1.5 years to work without having been paid.
Wow.
And just, you know, honor the project, honor the commitments we had. Again, you know, for some people it would have been braver probably to leave it. But I think in my case, it was going into that partly certain and partly uncertain situation, because I didn't know what will happen when I finish that project. How will I be able to make a living? But I certainly don't regret it.
That speaks a lot about your brave, actually. So thank you.
Thank you. And you said, Mal, that I could ask questions as well. So what's your bravest story? That's curious.
Thank you. One brave little story that I have just came into my head was the time where there was this guy who came to Melbourne, and that particular school that was learning coaching invited me because I was part of the alumni, right? So I went, and here he was, Sir John Whitmore, and I did not know who he was. And so without that fear of knowing, right, of course I did Google a little bit before that. I'm like, oh, okay, so he's an author, okay. And then he walked into this event, and I was the first to speak to him, because, you know, it's really awkward when there is like, oh gosh, someone's in the room, and everyone's like looking but not approaching the person, right? I just walked up straight to him and say, hey, John, welcome. It's like it was my event. And we got going, and such a great conversation. And then, you know, slowly people from different circles started to join this conversation. So it's just hilarious, just being able to, I wouldn't even say being brave, I was just being myself, just doing what's right. A new person comes into the room, and if they feel awkward, I'll make them feel comfortable. So I think that was one of that brave moment on hindsight.
Yeah, I just, you know, wanted to make a remark. Thanks for sharing that, and
You're welcome.
making the remark that that's what I was referring to, that from the inside, you know, it's just following a thought pattern or following a choice. And probably it sometimes looks very different to the people who are watching us from the outside. But if I may ask, what was your impression? And you said you had a good conversation. What stands out from that conversation?
I'll have to take back the mic right after this.
Okay, I will pass it back.
Just kidding. I just love how John is, there's no air about John. You know, he just talk about anything. And he was just practically asking me questions after a while, you know. And it's just like any good person would be having a conversation. They don't just wait for someone to ask them a question and then they are answering. And obviously he knows he's the guest of honor. I mean, he made me feel like he was really wanting to have a conversation with me. So I think that's the beauty of it, when there is no need to put on a certain way to carry yourself. I think that's just so honestly beautiful about it. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
And thanks for sharing, because, you know, I think not many of us had the chance to meet him. So, you know, having those memories and sharing those memories about him, who is on our pedestal somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just amazing that he has been probably also a deep and at the same time simple human being.
Absolutely. And I think in that simplicity is where I ask you that question. What is that simple truths of yours that you've come to realize as a coach, right? Coming in and a master coach. Yeah, what are your simple truths?
First of all, probably that truth is very temporary. It's probably something we are discover with continuous exploration and questioning.
Nice.
So I think it would be dangerous to say that I know the truth or we know the truth. We know probably parts of that. And I think that's probably important, of holding that concept lightly, with the thinking that, yeah, I know, and it's important to know some of the truth, but at the same time, I don't know. And I think that's something which was important for me in my journey. And I even have a concept for that. I call it the positive or constructive skepticism, that believing and disbelieving the client at the same time, because I absolutely believe that they share their own subjective truth and they believe that. And no questions about that. So it's not like not believing that they are telling me their truth at the moment. But at the same time, I disbelieve that that's everything, that they have already learned everything and discovered everything. And you know, seeing that the client now and the greater client, who they can become simultaneously, and holding this belief and disbelief, I think really helps to create real relationship, trust, safety, but also keep the curiosity. And it's funny because skepticism has a negative meaning, and actually skepticism is just a school of philosophy which was all about, you know, understanding what's beyond our understanding and learning more about what we don't know. And that's why I call it the positive constructive skepticism, and that has been very helpful for me. That's one.
Thank you.
On the same note, you know, we use words and language sometimes in a superficial way, because we don't really go into the depths of what we mean by that. And we often talk about trust. And often I think we think that trust is when there is no fear, or when we keep the conversation light. But actually, I think trust is a dynamic concept, and you give some trust, but then you develop trust by having the courageous conversation where you don't always, where not everything is comfortable, and where you can make mistakes and correct the mistakes. But that's how we develop trust, because that's how we learn what we can rely on and what we cannot rely on. And I think that was a big learning for me, that good coaching is not about, you know, having a nice conversation, feeling good, but having also some anxiety and holding that anxiety, because we are going into territories which are yet uncharted. And, you know, we don't know what will happen. It's that uncertainty. And at the same time, a really good learning journey where we have shifts in the mindset and in the worldview, they happen with confusion and frustration. So how do we hold that space for the client where they can trust us as enough to be okay with feeling frustrated and confused because a new view of world or a new, attitude or a new insight is emerging there. And I have learned that through my own experience also that I'm being sometimes frustrated in coaching, and not because my coach is not good, she's wonderful, but because I am challenged and I have to, there is even a terminology in science, it's called the cognitive imbalance. So that's when, my current worldview is challenged and something new doesn't fit into it. So that reconciliation. So these are probably some learnings.
Wow. So good. Leda, I hear what you just said, and it's as though what you're saying is get comfortable with the discomfort, because that is that journey towards not getting into a perfect state, because we're constantly moving and reshaping and shifting, and it's a continuous growing journey.
I remembered a thought from William Isaacs. He's, I think, a communication professor. And he said that there's a difference between thought and thinking. Very often thoughts are just memories. So we just reproduce something what we hold in our memory. Thinking is when you connect the things together or you come to a new thought. And that's a very different process in the brain. And it doesn't necessarily happen linearly. Probably it's preceded also by not knowing, by some confusion, by searching for that. And I think that's fascinating. I would say that coaching is the art of the thinking. It's a conversational art. And I think the way how we are in that conversation with the client, the way how we create that space, the trust, how we interact, how we use ourselves as coaches, that has a tremendous impact on the client. So my husband challenges me on that, but I would say that we do shape the client because, even not having an impact on them is an impact, some kind of impact. And it's important. I mean, that's also a responsibility for us as coaches, but that's the whole idea of coaching. It's having that space where we don't know what will emerge, but certainly our job is, the question we need to hold is, how can we create the most powerful and beautiful art together with the client?
Oh my. And you are sparking my thinking with new thoughts as well. So that is tremendous.
Can you share something?
Yeah. It's like art, right? So the coachee is drawing something as we are talking. So it's kind of like they're doing it on the fly. It's like they have the thought of that vision, and yet that journey to that drawing is not ready yet. It's not 100% there. It's like they're doing a tracing of something. It's just movement, right? And through that conversation, that movement becomes a little bit flowy, and there are some structure in it as well, because there are certain parts that need some structure, and yet those are not determining that next future. It has influences, but it does not always need to be that linear way, like this affects this and then this becomes this. So that was going through my thoughts just now.
Any form of art has structure.
Yeah.
But probably the best artists are able to use that structure in a way that it's not the structure what is most visible, but it's what is created with the help of that structure. And I believe this about the conversation. You are right. I don't think a conversation or any good thinking is linear. And there is a structure which is necessary. That's why coaching is a profession. It's well researched of what creates good thinking in a conversation, but how that becomes so inherent in a coaching conversation that all the rest is more important and more visible, while this is really present, while the whole structure and the rules of coaching are really present, but they don't dominate.
Yeah. And it is as though like we're allowing this creativity, the space, the co-existing and co-creating with each other to come together in this play that we are involved in.
Sometimes I hear, and I mean, I tend to ponder about it. Sometimes, we say that the client has the responses, we just need to drag them out. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think there is already something. So clients certainly cannot even formulate questions around what they are not comprehending about themselves yet. But I think coaching, because you said it's a co-creation, and I think it's really the collective intelligence. So having that conversation, there's something emerges.
Yeah.
What the client didn't know before and I didn't know before. I think that's back to the thinking. It's that the collective intelligence of, and the creativity of what did we create together with the intelligences we both had and used in our own roles.
Leda, the future, some say, is already here. The writing of the wall, the trends, what we're going through as humanity together, even in these trying times. In your thoughts, what do you picture the world of coaching will be like?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because future sometimes is unexpected. But sometimes I think about what might be, and I kind of think about 3 scenarios. They can happen simultaneously or separately in a fragmented way. But first of all, I think and I hope that at some point coaching won't be necessary, because we will all have the ability to listen, to ask questions, to be in a non-judgmental relationship with each other. And because coaching is nothing else than just a really good, respectful, philosophical conversation. And I think we all could have those skills and that kind of mindset. So maybe at some point will be completely unnecessary, and not because AI takes over our job, but because people will have this relationship. And I can see parts of that. So I can see that during the last 10-12 years how the conversations have changed. Of course, you can still see that some is not so deep, and people ask more questions, but they're still not listening. So we are not yet there. So we will still need coaches. Second scenario, which can happen at some point, that people are so overloaded with information that coaches might be needed to support good critical thinking and organizing, sorting out, choosing. I struggle sometimes myself with, making the right choices and not getting lost in all the right and fake information and science. So it's sparkling that clear thinking. And that's a question. Will it be a human being who will be very helpful here, or will it be an artificial intelligence? I don't know. I think I don't yet know well artificial intelligence. I know too little about its capabilities. The third scenario, which I hope will happen also, is how coaches can help to create a paradigm shift. So what we see now from vertical development research, that we have a much more mature society than we had like 10, 15 years ago. But we don't have so many adults, people who are able to think, really in a very transformational way and cope with all the paradoxes and polarities which are happening. So I think at some point the question is, what kind of society do we need, and how do we need to redesign it so that artificial intelligence and people can co-live, cohabit on this planet, and have a dignified, good life. I don't know the answers to that, but I know that that will not happen without good collaboration and good systemic thinking. And it's not easy to do that. So coaches who know the art of listening and questioning, how can we listen everywhere and support decision makers, and not only decision makers, all the people who have that intelligence, innovation, creativity, all the knowledge, how can we support them to bring these together into a picture? But I'm not a futurist, so these are just my own thoughts and very unfinished yet.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for sharing with us your thoughts as it is coming. Because as we've talked about, it's not about that whole finished ideals and ideologies. It's the continuous working on it, thinking on it, linking it to the others out there. What I'm taking away, Leda, is I hear there is that whole language. Language often is used to separate people. But I think what you're talking about is a language that everyone will start being able to speak, that it becomes a uniting language. That's what I'm taking away as your first point, right? And that's beautiful. And then of course your third point is that whole paradigms and paradoxes. And if only there was more of the open conversations that we can have, that will bring at the end of the day a deeper clarity, which is your second point, is that clarity, because we are going through layers of that right now. And that's what people are seeking for.
I think we all want to have a safe and dignified future, probably. And an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely. And Leda, there are coaches walking in even as we speak right now. What will be your master wisdom for these ones coming in?
It will be a simple wisdom, probably. One is deep understanding of what coaching is, what's our role. I think there are too many biases around how the competencies should be interpreted and what a coach does. So have a deep understanding, and that comes through practice also with experimenting. Sometimes I
Yes.
tell to my students, yeah, don't apply the competencies, just experiment, see what happens. And then they come back and say, oh, it doesn't work so well. So, having the courage probably to understand from different perspectives and never compromise professionalism and personal integrity.
Of course.
The coaching journey is also not linear, but from my own experience, it did pay off. Staying professional. Professional doesn't mean perfect.
Yeah.
We make mistakes. I have made lots of mistakes and I'm still making probably. I don't have perfect sessions, perfect processes, but not compromising professionalism. I think it's very, very important for the sake of the profession and also for our sake. Yeah. Because if we have a well-respected profession, then it will be good for us.
Yeah. It's like we're holding the space and everyone's holding that space until a day that we don't have to do that anymore, because more and more and more and more people are holding that space and having that beautiful conversation.
And coaching doesn't exist anymore because it's just a conversation, a really good conversation. And I know that, that's also the paradox that we are looking forward to that, but at the same time, we won't be able to make a living from that. So, it's also, there is a paradigm shift needed.
There is that shifts that there's happening. And even if we try to stop it, it will happen with its own momentum. And I think that's what happens with the best of things in our world, isn't it? When people start believing in it, and they start not just believing in it, but being it, living it. I haven't said this ever before, Leda, but I would be happy at that point of time to just let it go, because it's become.
Yeah, and probably there will be, we can't think today of all the opportunities what will exist when we have those kind of conversations and relationships in the society.
Yeah.
So it's never a loss, it's lots of gains.
And Leda, I often ask this as my final question in closing our wonderful conversation. What would be your powerful question that you want to leave behind to anyone watching the show?
Probably that's one of my weakest points in coaching. I'm not sure, if it's easy to ask always powerful questions. They come probably from deep listening and curiosity to the other people. But, I think that I will have three questions probably, if I may. One is that we have a bias around not asking why questions in coaching. And I think why questions are super, super useful questions, and they take us into the heart of the matter. It depends how we ask and when we ask. The why not questions also. And something I'm asking myself very often is, what am I not questioning, though I really should? And probably that's the question I would, ask the society, the people, that what are we not questioning? Because maybe it's so obvious, maybe because we are so used to that, but we really should, because there would be a tremendous potential.
What are we not asking? Ooh. Thanks for getting my mind there right now. It's like, ooh, So many things, so many things. Leda, this is the time where I say, hey, please share with us some of your handles so that we can come in contact with you.
Probably I'm not a social person in the sense that I'm quite not present and invisible on the social media, but of course I can be approached on LinkedIn. I do have a LinkedIn profile, so if you just insert my name and surname, there are few Ledas in the world, but probably I'm the only one, Leda Turai, with MCC in the whole world. So that's one option. I'm also on the Facebook. I every day spend about 10 minutes of checking my friends on the Facebook, but recently I have been quite inactive, so I can be available there as well. And so probably LinkedIn is the best way to get in touch. And I'm not yet that mature or that creative to write, so probably if you want my thoughts or want to continue this conversation, that I'm always available for good conversations in person.
And that's it. It's a wrap. This has been the 100 Master Coaches show together with Leda and myself, Mel. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.
You have been watching the 100 Master Coaches series with your host, Coach Mel, MCC. Brought to you by Catalyst Coach. www.catalystcoach.live. We will be right back with our next Master Coach on the 100 Master Coaches series.